like you, is it?
Like yesterday, yesterday I was up like at 5:00. So, well, actually, even before about 4:45, I got up, and today it was the opposite. I slept till about 6 minutes to 7.
Okay, so welcome everybody to Talking Niagara with me and Dave, and it's Wednesday, March the 12th, and we got a new we got several issues there. Okay, so that went
well. The big one, of course, is
yeah. Well, actually, let's start with the replacement to the Rib Fest, right? Why didn't they announce it this one? Is what I want to know. So they've come up and they're saying Ribstock being planned for Father's Day weekend, and it's kind of the replacement to Rib Fest.
Yeah, it's not Rotary. It's not somebody that's going to. They may donate to Rotary. You know, it's not Rotary at all. It's somebody else that said, okay, now I'm going to pick up on this opportunity. There's a tradition laid down here in town for the last 20 years that if you go on Father's Day, you can get ribs. So this fella's going to step in and do his own thing, and it appears as if he's going to give the money to charities.
Yeah. Well, that would be a good thing, because the thing is that obviously he's got to cover his costs.
Yeah.
But, profit to go to charity is always a good thing.
Yeah. So I've never heard of this fella. I just got Ribstock. It's going to be called.
Yeah.
So it's local events organizer Jay Robo.
Yeah.
By the name of Joe Robo is planning Ribstock for Father's Day, picking up, sort of slotting himself in on a tradition that's been going on for 20 years, thanks to Rotary Club.
Yeah.
The Rib Fest is no more in Niagara Falls, but this will be Ribstock. And he has a company, Big Guys Production and Event Services, have plans to keep the barbecue smoking this year, just a week after the Rotary Club announced the cancellation. So basically, it's going to be on Father's Day. He's going to do the same thing. And I don't know if he's looking for profit or he's going to give. He says, we're looking for this festival to pay for itself, basically. He said, I do have a couple of charities in mind we're looking to donate. So he's pretty much donating his time and effort for no payout, no pay in. So as long as he pays this cost.
Yeah. So any of these festivals takes, there's a cost. And, with the event that the Rotary has run for years, they have to cover their costs. They can't come out with a loss.
Well, that's the whole point. And then Rotary was worried about that.
Yeah.
About that. And they felt they couldn't sustain themselves and be assured of a profit.
Yeah. And that, and basically the whole point is that Rotary runs an event like that to make a profit, and the profit is what is used to donate to their good causes. All right. It's the same as the bingo that you run. Right. You use that, you make a profit out of it, and there's a certain cost to the bingo, and so long as you cover that cost, any profit goes to the good causes that you support, right?
Yeah, nobody gets paid at all. The only people that get paid are the people who print up the bingo cards for us or something like that.
They must get paid.
And that has nothing to do with any one of us.
Yeah.
It's thankfully the television station, I think it donates that time to us.
Yeah.
In the studio. I don't think we have to pay for that. And we have to pay the cab that goes around and drops all the checks off, something like that. But the vast majority of the money that we have come in goes right back into the community.
But the cab who drops the checks off is, you plan on that cost, right?
Yes, it's all planned costs.
Yeah.
There's no surprises.
And part of the reason you've got a cab to drop off the costs, the winning checks, is because you want it live on TV, right?
Yeah, basically we have it live on TV, and it's a very short game, 4 simple games, and the money, all the money we have come in that doesn't use for expenses goes right back in the community. It says here that Ribfest over the past 20 years has put $500,000 into the community. Well, we've done better than that. I think we were around $2 million.
Well, I'm interested.
Just for the Niagara region, though. That's just not just Niagara Falls. So
there was another story we cut. Yeah, there's another story, and let's bring that one up as well. So Niagara United Way are basically saying that their campaigns are falling short of their goal.
Sure,
right?
And that's to be expected. Really, when you think of it, everybody's skinned these days. Everybody's skinned.
Yeah.
So the United Way used to collect a lot of money. For one thing, most of the people at City Hall have a kind of a little donation they have every week after their check. I know that you could sign up for that. Is it okay if you take $3 or $5 off your check a week to give to the United Way? And most people do. So if you think of all the city staff doing that, or almost all of them, there's always a cheapskate. But there's if you think of all of them doing that, it piles up after a while, and a lot of other companies would go to they would ask their employees, would you mind donating so much? Or United Way ask you if you don't mind donating such $3 or $4 off your check every week.
Well, and you might not, if your pays on the rock bottom end of the pay scale. If you're earning minimum wage, you might well elect not to. But again, I'd have to say that I think United Way has kind of fallen out of people's mind. When I first came to Canada, you couldn't avoid United Way, right? I step off the bus or something, and you got an ad for United Way, on our high street. So, quite around everywhere was something, some promotion about United Way. I don't see that anymore.
No, well, that costs money to get a professional to get out there and advertise in a professional. That costs money. So there's always this situation. How much are we getting out of our advertising campaign?
Well, I get it. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the famous story of one of the, I was told it here before, that one of the leading charities, I think it's Oxfam, but I'm not so sure. So don't hold me to that. Way back in, I think it was the 70s, had a charity, a booming charity, and they had all volunteers basically, but only 50% of their money coming in actually went out into the field because of disorganization and administration costs. They took the decision to hire a CEO. Back then it was $200,000 a year. So they hired a professional executive to run it, and it was a big scandal. Everybody flipped, but he had that thing running like a smooth machine, really quick. And before you know it, over 80% of the funds that were coming in were going back out into the field. They were actually making
more money. Yeah,
more efficient. They were much more efficient. So
so
by spending what was thought to be an exorbitant amount of money, they actually made more money put back into the field. So these are the situations you have. So you wonder sometimes. I used to get these calls from sick kids, and they were just they had these terrible, terrible pitches. And I knew that the old person that used to phone me for sick kids, the volunteer that asked for asked for money, had been taken over by some slick advertisement company, and it was just stupid. And so I don't know. So but obviously they thought that they were going to make more money that way on a slick campaign.
Well, okay, so then one could ask the question as if you paid a local organizer, I'm not saying a $250,000 salary, would that mean that a local group would make more money?
No, because these are small groups that we have, small. So it wouldn't. The charity I'm talking about was a big, huge international one.
Yeah, and we're talking about
it was all stocked up with willing volunteers all over the place, but until they had a real professional look at how they were doing it. With us, yeah, we could use some improvements here and there, but we get around to doing everything and we don't lose money.
Yeah,
it all goes back into the community. So,
100%
of the profit goes into the community.
Yeah. And it's important with organizations like United Way, like Kiwanis, like everybody else, that you kind of got to make, like Rotary, you've got to make all of these work. They've already got to make money, but the trouble is, as you've been saying, nobody's got money.
Yeah, everyone's skinned these days, and everybody, of course, with all the trade worries and economic worries coming up, people are going to be holding their pennies even a little tighter.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I might not be wanting for money right now, but I don't, I think you'll find there's a lot of people who are going through this process of, I might not be waiting for money now, but I don't know what holds the future for 3 months' time or something. So I'm better off keeping this money in my bank account than thinking that I'm in good situation and paying it out to charity. I think that's what's going through a lot of people's mind, right?
Yeah, people are skinned.
Yeah.
But we get kind of lucky in this respect because people still have enough money for a bingo card and they get a chance to make some money.
Oh, and your bingo card.
They buy two bingo cards, that's $8. That's 6 games. So you buy two bingo cards, or one bingo card has 3 games on it. Three squares of bingo, right? So it's 3 chances there. So if you say buy 2 cards to play, so that gives you 6 chances to win on every game that the caller calls. Then that's $8. You get to sit at home, and your chances are much better than going to the casino or anything else to get to win. I know everybody I know that's played it has won at least once, and anyway, so. And you get together with your family. Most people get together with their families and things like that. So it's a little fun event. Some people go to a bar and play it. So it's kind of a fun family thing to do on a Sunday night. And I think Dominic Caruso does that with his family, or he used to anyway.
Yep.
And
he used to. I know at one point he did, because his family recognized you as the bingo caller.
Yeah.
When we were around there one time.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So so that happens. Now we're kind of lucky that way, that our charity works that way, but all that money's poured back into the community. And anyway, what do we got next?
Okay, so next we've got 83% of USAID contracts have been cancelled. This was a story we didn't get to yesterday. The administration of Donald Trump has targeted USAID as part of his efforts to trim government spending and reduce waste. The only thing about this, big thing I think about this, is that most of your more conservative presidents in the past have always viewed USAID as being a kind of goodwill gesture that actually it's not about the money spent, but it's about the goodwill generated.
It's called soft power.
Yeah.
It's called soft power. It's been a hallmark of U.S. interaction with the other countries all over the world. Yeah. I've seen them. I've seen USAID in different parts of the world where I've been. There was a huge USA depot within walking distance of the place I was staying in Accra, Ghana. I used to walk by it, and what was notable about it, they had no guards around it. They and they didn't really have to, because the big police station was just a very, very close by. But they had no guards around, which surprised me, because that's always been an issue with people going in and stealing stuff from the USAID. But it was part of the American people are a generous people. I'll put it out that way. When I was a kid and I worked in the restaurants down on Clifton Hill, you loved it when Americans came in, because they were generous with their tips. Yeah, very generous. They were generous tippers. I mean, they were loud, sometimes obnoxious, but most of the time they were kind of a little on the loud side, but very generous, very jolly kind of. So you like to have them there, because they were very lively and very generous and easy to work with. I mean, you get the few persons that snapped a finger and that kind of thing, but generally speaking, no. And and I think that was part of what launched the USAID thing. It was that kind of American ideal to go out and help the world. They have already had that going on in their society for a long time, particularly with the religious people who went out throughout the world.
Well, and that's probably as massive as USAID itself, right? That we have a number of areas. We have a number of areas. We've got people like Doctors Without Borders. I think there's a nursing organization that corresponds with that as well. We've got a whole heap of people that are out there in the world developing, helping people in places that need it. And, USAID has just been one of many things that I think most people have said in the past. Well, yes, it's a tax upon the US Federal Reserve, if you like, but it's actually it's money being spent well in promotes America, the good side of America.
Because that was the whole part is, like, you go about the world and you bring medicines, you bring experts to help you learn how to, like, it's just not dumping food. So you bring medicines, you bring farmers to help people learn how to farm or take better care of their farms, people who dig wells. It goes on and on and on. If you go through the country of Ghana, you'll see all these hand pump wells everywhere. They are indestructible. And what was happening was people, ignorant, well-meaning people from church groups and things like that will go to a village and put a nice big electric pump in there for their water. And after they left and it broke down, no one knew how to fix it or keep it going. So then they began to standardize a pump, just ordinary hand pump wells, make them so they're super resilient. And that worked, because everybody in the villages now have a clean source of reliable water coming out of the ground on a hand pump that's nearly indestructible. And they do know how to fix them. They're taught how to fix them if something does go wrong with them. So that was a much better idea. But there's a lot of misplaced charities.
And it's great to think, hey, you can put a fantastic piece of machinery in here that'll deliver 1,200 gallons of water every 6 hours or something. But the trouble is, if it can't work, if you can't fix it, and and you have to send off to America to fix it, you're not going to get it done, are you?
Well, also, they used to do the same thing in Indonesia and stuff like that. I heard stories from the Indonesian engineers I worked with for a couple of months. Somebody would come in, look, oh, these poor people, they don't have a tractor. They bring in a tractor and they bring in all this, and the people would work with the tractor for a while, and they would make a lot of money because they could till the field. As soon as it breaks, No one knows where to get a spare part. No one knows how to fix it. And there it sits in the field, rusting away, because you're better off giving them a better hoe, a better plow to drag behind their animals to have, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and because you don't have, a perfectly good machine that can't be fixed because for want of a $10 part.
Yeah, it's just misplaced altruism, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, but again, I think USAID has been, not putting aside issues like misplaced altruism. I think USAID has been good at giving some stability in certain countries.
Well, the problem here is there's a lot of suspicion around it now because of what Elon Musk has done. There is going to be a lot of fat and corruption around a big agency like this. Remember, this is a very small agency. What does it, 2% of the money that's going out? There's a lot of focus. There's a big microscope on USAID. Trump gets it wrong all the time. Yeah, he's a very cruel man, as you could see by the way he humiliated Lesotho. He did that last term when he called the Africans a bunch of shithole countries. He likes to humiliate people. He likes to humiliate Canada by calling him. He's got a cruel streak in him, and so you can tell that guy couldn't care less how many people were fed by USAID or helped by USAID. But the problem, of course, is it run efficiently? But the problem I have with this is, they just kind of dismissed all these huge hunks of USAID without really looking into them. So you interrupted food supplies that people depended on, medical supplies that people depended on. And then you said, oh, Gaza gets $50 million worth of condoms. That's a big lie, a big fat lie. But once it's out there, you can't turn it around. The Gaza was in Mozambique, and it was to fight HIV. The business about Lesotho getting things for LGBTQ stuff was a big lie. That money also went to HIV. And the money that did go to Lesotho. And as a matter of fact, I heard somebody from Lesotho says, well, they said they're giving us money. I don't see it. So, you know what I mean? Yeah. So he's a cruel man who's dismissive.
Well, a lot of this is
what else in the world that live in whoever heard of Lesotho or those shithole countries. Really, that's going to make it where China's going in there and improving their infrastructure all over Africa, and they're going to get better trade out of Africa. And
of course,
some ignorant president doesn't understand that. He's setting up the U.S. for failure, at least in Africa and other places in the world, if he doesn't watch it.
And of course, that's the fairest thing. What you just said there is that China is making inroads because China's equivalent of whatever the Chinese are doing and their aid efforts are being accepted. And the trouble is the Chinese, many aid organizations have never paid attention to local people. The Chinese are as bad as the West were.
Well, that's Chinese soft power, but Chinese soft power comes at a huge cost.
Yeah.
You get into the things called the debt trap, right? Where you are now stuck paying the Chinese off. So you are now going to sell them their minerals at a discount. You are now going to sell them your agricultural products at a discount because they're the ones that fix your port and
well, they're the ones who built your railroad and things like that, right?
Yeah, when I was in Ghana, I watched Chinese crews building roads.
And when you think about
the best roads they'd had there since the British.
Yeah, and I was going to say, when you think about it, the things like the railroads that were the British put in a century ago or more, the fact that they fell apart when the British left is actually I have to say it was on the government of the relevant nations in Africa that those fell apart.
Do we have anybody listening to us? We haven't had a comment yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have got people listening. We just don't have comments. We had the good morning from Mike, as always.
Hi, Mike. Metaphysical Mike. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
So instead of the problem I have with that, I don't have any problem with trimming the fat of some of these agencies. All I know is the people I saw that were working for USAID weren't on the bubble. Basically, they weren't making money for doing nothing. They were real people. The U.S. farmers that grow food for USAID are stuck in a situation right now too, because that was were contracts the USAID had with American farmers to supply excess grain and other materials for USAID. So they're going to be kind of in a stuck situation. I think what they should have done is gone through it, okay, one by one. Get a bunch of people looking at it.
Line item by line item.
And you stake this stack and look through it.
Yeah.
Is this valuable? Is this valuable? Is this valuable?
Yeah.
Will this enhance our position in the world by giving this kind of aid?
That's what they should have done. But of course, the trouble is with any Department of Government Efficiency, they tend to go, aha, there's $100 million here that are being, in my mind, being misspent. All right.
Or like, aha, here's $50 million. Here's $50 million going to Hamas and Gaza. And when somebody looks into it, it was $7 million for condoms that went to Gaza in Mozambique.
Yeah. And stupid things like that, if they'd have done it on a line by line basis and really understood them, that would be better, a way better way of looking at it. And maybe you say, hey, the condoms going to this place called Gaza in Mozambique, are not worthy of giving that aid. That's fine. All right. But you make that on a item by item basis.
Well, yeah, it was there for the HIV. Yeah, it was there for the HIV outbreak they had there. Also, Moto too. That was the source of the aid. Now they said something about the two LGBTQ whatever non-binary or whatever. They said nothing to do with that at all. Had to do with an HIV outbreaks. Very similarly, how they twisted the truth about Gaza and Madagascar. But once they get the lie out there, it's made the impression. And if a week later, it gets corrected, but they say it really quietly. But when they said it the first time, look at this, $50 million worth of condoms going to Hamas and Gaza. And then, it had nothing to do with Hamas, and it was going to Gaza and Mozambique.
And the guys, the people in Hamas are going, where the hell are those condoms?
Yeah, where are they? Trump says we can make bombs out of them. Hey. Trump says we're making bombs out of our condoms. Well, man, where are they? Abdul, where'd you put those condoms?
Yeah, exactly. So could you imagine? Can you imagine? All right, let's move on. This one actually is an important factor. So Gwynne Dyer is talking about the late great NATO alliance.
I think we should probably wait a minute before we get into this kind of thing. I think we should probably talk about the hoofra that happened yesterday. I mean, I think that's on top of mind for everyone around. Like these other things would be in our lineup for a long time.
What particular thing are you talking about?
I'm talking about Trump threatening to put this 50% tariffs on aluminum and steel, and then withdrawing them after Doug Ford. Doug Ford agreed not to put a 25% surcharge on power. So everybody's claim. Well, of course, Trump's claiming victory here because Ford, of course, we know was going to put a 25% surcharge on three states, right? And that was going to happen today, I think it was. He got a phone call from Howard Lutnick asking him not to do that, according to his side of the story anyway. He got a phone call from Howard Lutnick that offered an olive branch to Trump, to Ford, to say, come on down here and we'll talk, but don't put those tariffs, that surcharge on that power. Ford agreed to do that. But in the meantime, as Ford was going to put that on there, Trump was going to increase the tariffs on steel and aluminum from 25 cents to 50% coming into from Canada. That would have crushed the U.S. economy. Lutnick had to do something, because nowhere can the United States source that kind of material that quickly. 80% of its aluminum comes from Quebec, and they have no way have the capacity to do that. No way could they source it quickly from Iceland or Brazil or wherever else they make it. That would have crushed the U.S. economy big time. So Lutnick had to do something. So he reached out in Olive Branch and says, look, you drop your surcharge and he'll drop his 50% back down to 25%. What Ford is going to do is he's going to go down with the Canadian officials, trade officials. What the heck's his name? Anyways, they're going to go down there on Thursday for a meeting. Anyway, Trump is going to slap the tariffs on today of 25%. And they're going to go down there on Thursday and talk this out. It's a good cop, bad cop. Hang on.
Talking about finance minister.
What?
Hang on. You're talking about federal finance minister Dominic LeBlanc.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew it was a French name, but it was lost in me. So they're going down there to do some chin wagging, and basically it's a good cop, bad cop kind of thing going on there. Trump is the erratic one. That's a tariff today, not a tariff tomorrow, another tariff today, threats, that kind of thing. Humiliation of Canada. You're just nothing but a 51st state. Hey, Governor Trudeau, that kind of thing. So he's kind of froth at the mouth, crazy man. And Lutnick is the sort of the good cop. Hey, don't, like, he just talks. Talk to me. We make the deal. Let him go off at the mouth, because that's what he does. So you and I, we'll make the real deal here. I'll talk him into it later. It's kind of a little bit like, in my mind, it's a little bit like the Nixon Kitchener Kissinger con that they tried out on the North Vietnamese, where Kissinger would go to the North Vietnamese, and so they would bomb the hell out of Hanoi. And Kissinger would go to Hanoi and say, look, this guy is crazy. My boss is crazy. He's right off his lid. Like, you got to tiptoe around him. Yeah. I'll try to convince him. And then if something went wrong in something that they didn't like in the negotiation happened, there'd be another big, massive bombing raid. And Kissinger said, look, he wants to drop a nuke on you and all this. I'm just holding him back by that kind of thing, So that's what they're doing here. I think Trump's looking like a depraved, crazy man, tariff here, tariff there, froth at the mouth kind of thing. And Lutnick is saying, oh, look, just don't, like, he's nuts, he's crazy, he doesn't know what he's doing, but I do, and we'll sort this out, you and me, okay? Like, good cop, bad cop kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if Ford's going to be played by that. I'm not so sure about LeBlanc. LeBlanc is like too nice of a guy,
That's what bothers me about LeBlanc, because he hasn't impressed so far.
No, he doesn't look like he's got the teeth to do this. Ford would go in there and fight like a bulldog, but I don't know about LeBlanc. And everybody seems to think, and the book on Trump is that he's cruel and he's vain and he's vindictive. So he likes to humiliate people. He likes to put them down. He likes to belittle them. So that he gets a bit of joy out of that. And he's very vain. So if you tell him how wonderful he is, right, then he doesn't have to tell himself how wonderful he is. He enjoys that. So those are the two ingredients, basically. Let him humiliate you and then tell him how wonderful he is, but try to get what you want out of him in the meantime.
Yeah. And it's that's a pretty nasty piece of work where we are there.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to go on to the Gwynne Dyer thing about the late great? Hang on, we got a couple of comments. So
that would stimulate a few of them.
Yeah. So what Doge has done is just cut jobs, and the easiest way to save money, they got rid of auditors. Usually that would usually do what you're speaking of, which is the audit and trim function. Yeah. Okay. Canada should do nothing that costs us money. They should do whatever costs the US people money, like Ford's idea.
Yeah, basically, our targeted response with our tariffs are the idea that you shoot at certain sections of the economy. Obviously, we can't do what the U.S. does because they're bigger and they can do the whole thing. They can target everything that comes in from Canada. But if we target certain things in the United States that would hurt Republican areas or something like that, I think what Ford is doing every day, going into U.S. news on Fox or CNN or MSNBC, talking his case, that's a very good thing, because the American people, generally speaking, are kind of ignorant. That doesn't mean they're wonderful people. I don't think they're stupid or anything like that, but they're not educated well, and they're inwardly focused.
Yeah.
So they don't know where Lesotho is, and of course they laugh along with them. Well, they just expose themselves as ignorance. When everybody said that,
Right.
when he said that at a speech and everybody laughed, I thought, God, the laugh's on you, you ignorance.
Yeah.
Anyway, so go ahead.
Yeah. I've got one more comment here, which is by Shelby Willie Boudoin. Ford gonna fold like a bad poker hand on Thursday is my prediction.
Well, they're definitely going to put the guns on him and put all kinds of threats, the kind of threat he won't be able to say. Pretty much. We don't know. Like I said, it's going to be a good cop guy. How's your dad anyway, Shelby? I hope he's in good shape. Anyway, so it's not LeBlanc and Ford are going to go there. They're going to talk to Lutnick, who is kind of the insulator between the world and Trump, at least economically. We'll see. Trump's doing the 25% thing right now. It's going to hurt the American economy. If you ever put the 50% on it, would crush the American economy, because they can't source those metals that fast. I'm sure they've got a stockpile of them right now, but that'll whittle down.
Yeah.
So even the 25% will hurt. So we don't even know if this is going into play. We know that Lutnick knows that 25% will increase a lot of costs for the average American. And so we don't really know how long or how fast.
Well, the apparently, from what I've heard and the information I've been looking at, America's the supply of electricity to America is done by Ontario at a loss right now.
I don't know.
Primarily because of the change of the change of fortunes of the Canadian dollar. I should have added that one.
Oh, because they charge in Canadian dollars. Well, they should charge in US dollars.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm not so sure about that. I haven't. That's the first I've heard of it.
There you go. Dad is great. Hopping mad about this Trump B shit though. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. Well, so is every Canadian. Really, don't you feel like you're being backstabbed?
Yeah.
I do. I feel like being stabbed right in the back.
Yeah.
Like the guy is like stomping on one of his best allies. That's because he's a bully and he's cruel and he's vindictive. That's an essential part of him. He just loves to humiliate people and put them down. Even Jeffrey Epstein said that about Trump. By the way, I heard an interview with Jeffrey Epstein I don't know, a few days ago. And that's one of the things he said about Trump. He said that Trump was really good at real estate, but he was dumb at every other kind of business. He really didn't have a good business sense outside of real estate.
Yeah.
He said that that he is funny and charming, but he's also very he can be very cruel. So, well, he didn't say he could be horrible. He could be a very horrible person. He said he could be horrible to you and your wife, particularly that kind of thing. He has a tendency to be a horrible to people. Yeah, that's how Epstein said it. So there, and there's a horrible guy talking about another horrible guy.
Well, okay, yep. I'm not gonna even comment upon that. All right. Gwynne Dyer. So he's talking about the late great NATO alliance.
Yeah. Well, what do you got on that? What's your
Well,
opinion?
yeah, it's interesting because he's basically saying, he's saying here is NATO is retired on its sick bed as soon as Donald Trump won the presidency last November. And to be quite honest, I had to, when I kind of look back in history, I'm thinking to myself, basically in 1990, the reason for NATO ended. One could take that view. With the collapse of the Soviet bloc, the reason for NATO ended.
Well, yeah, that was the impression. And as I said before, the U.S. is very upset about all his NATO allies not spending enough on defense. But after the Soviet Union collapsed, all the nations, including the United States, reduced the money they were paying for defense. So all the NATO nations, including the United States, reduced the amount of money for defense. After the U.S. was attacked in 9/11, they ramped up their defense spending, obviously, because they felt that they were now they were attacked on their own soil. So they ramped theirs up. But the other countries did not. But do remember, too, that the only time that Article 5 has been invoked for NATO was when the United States was attacked and all the NATO nations went to Afghanistan to beat up on the Taliban and look for Al-Qaeda.
Yeah.
Of course, Osama bin Laden famously escaped from the Tora Tora Mountains and lived pretty much almost in plain sight in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Finally, they got him, but that was a NATO response. And NATO came to the assistance of the United States in every way after that attack.
But you
including Canada in a big way.
Yeah.
So the idea that the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, I think it was, and then but NATO expanded after that. If you remember, you could see that NATO wasn't really needed, but they didn't really have that opinion at the time. Even though they were reducing the money they were spending on defense, they were expanding NATO, which was irksome to Russia. And they kept expanding, but Russia didn't have an army at that time to resist. So Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Hungary, all these places, all these countries joined NATO.
Yeah.
And so if you were to say that NATO become unnecessary right after the fall, like you had proposed, then why did they expand?
Well, yeah, and but you get where I came from about the original reason for its existence. It essentially ended in 1990. It's just that NATO has now reformed itself. Now,
there was a lot of people at the time that said, "Wait a minute, Russia's not going to stay dormant." Russia itself said to the world, "Look, you put your thumb down on us and you chased us out of Afghanistan. Well, you're going to get a whole lot of Islamic terrorists coming." And everybody says, oh, that's your problem, not us. Guess what? The whole world became full of Islamic terrorists.
It's the whole problem of the world. It became a world problem, And the question about it, though, is the whole development. I think it's Europe that needs NATO more than anything else, right? I think Europe needs it way more than the US needs it.
Well, as I said, the U.S. is the only one that ever invoked the Article 5. So there you go. Everybody would have thought that prior to 9/11, wouldn't they have? We don't need NATO. Nothing ever happens here. And then the planes crash into the towers.
Yeah.
But the United States wants to focus its defense towards China. It feels that they felt for a very long time that the Europeans could take care of their own defense.
And exactly.
But if you remove the United States as a kind of an umbrella over that, then you weaken that alliance.
Yeah, and exactly as you were saying, NATO being North Atlantic Treaty Organization is supposed to be about the defense of Europe and US and Canada. It's about that area, that geographic area, but it has very little to do with the Pacific, the Pacific Northwest, and areas such as China, Japan, and and China's impact upon America, as you just said there, because that's not NATO territory.
No, it isn't. And but do you now? Russia. Everyone suspects that Russia has its imperialistic designs back again. It wants to be the imperial power that it was. It's not really possible, I don't think. But they have nukes, and they have a big army. And right now, they're learning a lot of bitter lessons about war. They are now one of the most experienced armies in the world. They came into Ukraine. They came into Ukraine tripping over each other, but look what they're doing now. They went into an abandoned gas pipeline, ran through the gas pipeline, got behind the Ukrainian forces, and ambushed them. That's a big difference. That kind of thing is a big difference than getting stuck in the mud driving into Ukraine and bumping into the tank in front of you, which happened at the beginning of the war. Yeah. So they're honing their skills, and right now Europe is looking at a very professional, well-honed, very cruel army by all accounts on its border.
Well, if you look at it that way, you're talking about it's like they're one of the most experienced armies in the world right now, because of the fact that they've got that actual edge there on the go. They've been working, right? And clearly, the Ukrainian army doesn't have the same kind of capacity. And that is what's giving the great advantage. And if suddenly now the Russian army is going to move elsewhere, that Russian army is already leagues ahead of the rest of the world, because our armies have been doing nothing but training. They're not battle ready.
That's going to be a problem. And you get little countries like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, particularly Estonia. Like, it's only got like 1.5 or 2 million people in the whole country, and it's a little pocket up there. They're more related to the Finns than they are the Russians or the Latvians or Lithuanians. So there's this tiny country with a tiny ethnic population, and it's right on the Baltic Sea. So what do you think Russia's going to do?
Yeah.
If you didn't have NATO, and now if the U.S. walks out of NATO, that makes that little country look just a little bit more tempting to take. And now, are the other NATO nations willing to step up? And they got a lot of work to do, because the United States is the one that was the glue that held everybody together.
Yeah.
Now they're going to have to take responsibility. I think it's probably a good thing in the long run, because the United States really does have to turn their attention to the military power of China.
I wouldn't say,
with its kind of gleefully looking at Taiwan. China has said quite openly that it had planned to invade Taiwan by 2027. That, I think, has been put on the back burner for a while. But still, they have quite openly said, we're going to take Taiwan. Taiwan is ours, and we're going to take it in a certain situation. If the United States backs up Taiwan or protects them, as it should, because of all the microchip production there, I don't know. Now, Trump's the kind of guy, the Taiwanese have taken their microchips and started building them in the United States right now. But Trump's the type of guy, do we have enough microchips? Yeah, okay. Well, we'll give China, we'll make a deal with China. You take Taiwan and we'll take Canada. You don't say anything about that, no, and we won't say anything about you taking Taiwan. Hey, we got a deal. We got a deal on South Korea today. You want that too?
I don't think the South Koreans would be happy, but I get where you're coming from. And the challenge here is that I think and you kind of edged on this. NATO has been leaning on the US, has been kind of the leadership of NATO has always come from the US. In reality, I think the leadership of NATO needs to start to come from the European nations now.
Well, yeah, well, they're trying to do that. They're trying to ramp up, and the United States has been the overall. Now, the United States has always complained since 2011 that Europeans or Canadians are not putting their fair share into defense, and rightly so. They should be complaining about that. But on the other hand, they've also said, don't worry about anything. Don't bother getting your nukes up and ready to go. Britain and France have nukes, but they've all been kind of mothballed. The Brits would take a long time before, like the nuclear umbrella that the United States provided for NATO, at the same time saying to NATO countries, no, don't bother getting nukes, don't bother developing nukes. We got the nukes for you. And then they say, okay, now we want out. So that's the big thing. The nuclear umbrella, the nuclear protection is gone.
But the Britain and France, you're right. Britain and France have got nukes, but they're old nukes. So they're nukes that are from the 80s or 80s, I think, onwards, earlier. Both Britain and France. But again, I've always believed that actually, in a war situation, they could revamp their nuclear armaments in about 2 weeks. In fact, I read a defense strategy paper that said that back in the 80s.
Well, I don't know if they've developed tactical nuclear weapons like the US and Russia have done. Probably
maybe not, but
that takes a lot of money.
Yeah.
And like I said, they were quite comfortable with the nuclear protection that the United States has provided. Now you got this Tin Pot Nero type of Caligula kind of sort of emotional, irregular, chaotic type of president. So you got to do something very fast. You weren't given time. Look, we're going to give you 10 years to get up to snuff, right? We're going to pull most of our troops out, most of our money out. You're going to have to take care of this yourself, and we'll give you 10 years to do it. Trump's probably going to drop him like a hot potato pretty soon, because the biggest problem the United States has is debt. That's why Trump wants to throw tariffs on everything, is to increase money to cover the debt. And the expenditures in Ukraine were causing more debt. The expenditures on NATO were causing more debt. He has to turn that around, because the debt is the albatross around the neck of.
And that's exactly why I'm saying. And that's exactly why I'm saying that the leading nations in Europe need to step up on NATO, because if they need it, it's for their own protection. It's for European protection, and it's to to assist the Europeans stopping a future war. And they need to take more of the leadership of NATO than they have done. They need to take, put more of the money into NATO than they have done, and they need to ramp up their own armaments.
Yeah, all of those things, and they've been told that for years and years by different American administrations. Now Trump figures, well, he's going to save money somehow, and he's got to dump NATO. I mean, he says stuff like, would they ever come to our defense? We've got a big ocean there. Well, like I said before, the only time Article 5 has ever been invoked was to protect the United States.
And everybody came to their defense.
Yeah. And help with aid and money and all kinds of different things. So, especially Canada. Canada come up big time.
Yeah.
After 9/11.
Well, in fact, actually,
Australia too.
Yeah, Canada came up big time, because where did the planes all put down? Mostly on Canadian soil, right?
Yeah, but it was more than that. It was aid that we sent down to New York, and
I know.
Things, and all other kinds of help that the U.S. might have needed at that time. Australia was a big contributor too, so that kind of thing. And but definitely, he thinks that the big ocean is going to protect them. Well, it didn't during 9/11. Keep that in mind. don't forget the supersonic missiles that can go halfway around the world. And, little Kim Jong-un is going to get one of those. So he's backing away from his allies, which is probably a bad thing. But the book, I don't know. There's so many different opinions on this. It's hard to sort them out.
Yeah.
But definitely China is the rising power, and its expansion into to Pacific is probably more of an issue now. The United States quite rightly probably says, Europe is wealthy enough that can protect itself. It doesn't need us.
Yeah.
You can do yourself. But it should have given them like a 10-year window, like this is how much, we expect you to take care of your own defense. Mostly we can help you in the background or help you with intelligence or something like this. We have to turn our eyes to this huge burgeoning power called China and its designs on Taiwan and Philippines, etc.
But let's kind of put this one to bed in some hours. What French President Emmanuel Macron said on Saturday is we have a shield, and the non-nuclear NATO countries don't. Right, so there's an advantage that France and Britain have, and they can no longer depend upon the American deterrent. And we need a strategic dialogue with those that don't have it, said Macron. So basically, Macron is admitting there that France, Britain needs to be taking the lead in the new NATO.
Well, they're going to have to diversify where they have to make very clear that they have nuclear submarines that have nuclear weapons in them, because nuclear submarines can hide. The Soviet Union can identify the locations inside Britain and France that have nuclear bombs, and sort of in the event that they fear that they're going to be used, can wipe those areas out with their own nuclear weapons. So what Britain and France has to do is make sure that Russia knows that from anywhere around the sea, a nuke could hit them. Sadly, this is the deterrent we need. Unfortunately, mutual annihilation is the deterrent.
Well, and the worst about it is when I was in my 20s, I sat down and I thought, based upon the capability that I read up about what nukes were possible to do, and I read up and I mapped out all the circles of all the target areas about if they targeted nukes at specific points in Britain. I found there was like a square mile in the middle of Britain that wouldn't be nuked. Right.
Is that where you moved?
No, I didn't. Later on, I found out actually that square mile was a heap of junk, because in fact I'd missed an army base that was only 22 miles away, so that would have been hit, of course. Hey, my square mileage was all out. But I then spread that whole thing to Europe, based upon my knowledge of where army bases were, where cities were, etc., where potentially, the big places, nuclear arsenals attacking Europe is basically, it is the end of civilization in Europe. Full stop, end of story, no argument. There's no possible argument from that, because if you get it both ways, Britain and France could annihilate much of Russia, at least the Western Russia, and likewise the Russians can annihilate 99% of Europe. Yeah,
and they have supersonic high-speed missiles. They actually outdeveloped the U.S. in some of those delivery systems. So they're basically speaking, they're in a tough shape right now. We've got this escalation of problems. The U.S. is pulling out of the region. It's turned its back on Ukraine against its own agreement with Ukraine in January 1994. Rubio has now turned his back on Ukraine. He once called Putin a war criminal and a butcher, and now he's just some guy that I got to deal with. So he's turned his attitude away from that. So definitely the U.S. has made is very clear. We're getting out of Europe. We don't want this. And I say it's a huge amount of that is the massive debt that the U.S. keeps incurring.
Yeah,
and that has to be turned. And stopping expenditures like what was happening in Ukraine is one of those things.
Okay, so Shelby is basically now wants Canada and his new real estate project. What could stop the US from just taking Canada by force? That's a good question. This is actually where kind of I think kind of now Canada needs to be building relationships with other parts of the world. It's those relationships, commercial relationships, that also turn into defense relationships. Could Canada then
there's no way we could ally with anyone else as a deterrent to the United States. They would crush us in a minute.
But again,
you can't say, okay, well, we got our big buddy France come over here and they're going to protect us against you. Well, that's going to happen for 10 minutes.
Again, Article 5.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. But nobody's going to stand up to the United States. France and Britain aren't going to come here to protect us. They don't want to get swatted out of the fly.
I know.
But basically speaking, the reason the big argument against Canada becoming part of the real estate of the United States was aptly put by there's a conservative pundit by the name of what's his name? Hansen. And I was listening to him the other day. I go all over the place looking for opinions across the right-left divide, basically. And he said the one reason why they won't take Canada in is because we are a much more left-leaning country. And if they took over Canada, they would have to give us senators and congressmen that more likely would lean left. And that's exactly what the Republicans don't want.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
In his view, Trump is being a troll, just making threats, that kind of thing.
Well, that's exactly.
And using the 51st state to humiliate us.
Yeah, and that's exactly my view upon that, because even though we've got conservatives, we've got large numbers of conservatives here in Canada. The vast majority of conservatives here in Canada are European-style conservatives and not MAGA hat Republicans.
Well, they're more like the old Republican. The conservatives here are more like the old Republican.
Yeah.
Less government, less taxes, that kind of thing. But anyway, so that's basically they could do that at any time. They can.
And Mike
just walk up here and take over.
Yeah,
but what would they want to? I mean, it's just a lot less. It's a lot less expensive to have an ally take care of your northern frontier than you put the money in yourself, particularly when they're demanding that we do our part. Now, Hansen says, Trump says that there's a $200 billion imbalance in trade between Canada and the U.S. This Hansen fella, who is a conservative pundit, says that it's more likely around $50 billion. But he doesn't distinguish the fact that the only thing we make money on is oil. Everything else we lose money on.
Yep.
So,
all right. Okay. So Mike Cushman is saying you've seen what's happening in Ukraine. Same here. No one would help.
Oh yeah. They would just turn their back and some excuse. They might send us a World War II tank or something. Here.
Okay, we're going to have to quit this right now.
Okay, without further ado, I bid you adieu. Welcome, Shelby. Nice to hear from you. Last time I saw her was